just have
We're going to be in now. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks. Thank you, Jack. You're the man. Okay, sounds like everybody had a good time, and that's great. So let's continue our good time with some discussion from the breakout groups. So what we're wondering is, we've got the camera, which is either a positive or negative reasons for people responding to my next question, but if reporters would be comfortable coming up here, get to be on camera, probably the sound will come out clearer. So I'm just wondering, do we have a reporter from one of the breakouts that would be willing to come up?
Sure, I will.
Great, come on up.
Love it.
Oh, my official
Yeah.
sign-in sheet and everything. So
That's great.
you're asking the question and I'm...
Well, you're going to just do a report, just say who you are.
I'm Lisa DeBrito. I'm from DMH New Bedford site office. Lynn Olsen-Vera's administrative assistant. So we had our little breakout group and spoke. Dan has no voice right now, so so I'm glad that I can speak for you. So the first one was development of housing issues, and the first issue we spoke of was money. We spoke about money, and I'll just kind of go over the bullets. So the first bullet was DMH budget does not allow enough subsidized money to be able to afford living in newly developed housing. PACT providers to make money available through contingency funds, we spoke of that. DMH subsidies program just received an additional $3 million, but there are strict guidelines. Section 8 can't compete with rising costs. Mass housing set-asides, contractors get money from the state. They need to give back units, but it's not always to DMH. Is that correct? Not always to DMH, was that correct?
DDS.
Oh, DDS also.
And then if they refinance, we lose them.
Okay, if they refinance, we lose those units. Okay. Talked about advocating for more incentives at the legislative level, and how we need to get more aggressive with the 3% set-asides. Finding landlords is an issue. Dan was saying how Taunton Attleboro site at one point went out to the landlords to educate them about different incentives, mental health, write-offs, etc. like that, in hopes that they will be more willing to provide housing units to DMH. Another bullet was monitoring. No one is monitoring what's being built to be able to set aside units for DMH. And we should work more with the zoning boards, contractors, builders, etc. Access to resources. DDS has access to more resources than DMH does. And strict guidelines can limit available units to DMH. So that was on that. We're just sticking with the first section.
So you did the question, what now you're doing?
I don't know
Citizen?
if everyone wanted to come up and do their part of the other one?
We'll just,
Or do you want me to go right into the
Yeah.
development of working relationship?
Yep.
Okay. Development of working relationship with, of citizen advisory boards. Mostly, we talked about technology. The use of technology to get members to be able to participate in meetings when they can't physically attend the meetings. Perhaps ask the employers if the members can use their technology to access meetings during their lunchtime. Ask employers to provide the technology as part of their civic duties. And spoke about older individuals, members that don't have knowledge of technology. They need a place to go where those with knowledge can help them to access meetings. So that was also what we talked about, technology. That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you.
So do we have another courageous reporter that would like to come up? Great, thank you.
I was volunteer. Hi, I'm Dr. Gedron, CEO of Taunton State Hospital, if we haven't met. I'm here for number 2, work group with barriers to housing. Definitely income, that's always a huge issue. Corey checks, apartment owners, those were some of the issues. Definitely the idea of private donations to create the funding. Definitely Alan, his project with Homeless Not Hopeless, having nonprofit or churches become the renters, and then the people who are staying there being guests, that's been very successful. So trying to see more ideas like that might be a way that we can go to help in that area. Another area was contradictory regulations. So for example, one of the points that was brought up is it'd be really nice if your services and where you live were actually close to each other. But if you put too many people together, then that's segregating and you're not putting them with the general population. So how do you make it convenient while at the same time not separating them? So, I mean, there's kind of like that push-pull, and if some of these things could be worked out, they thought that would be helpful. Other things, for if your child is living with you, and your child could be 40 or older, but you're definitely, that's beneficial to the state, but it puts a crunch on the family member that they're living with, because they still have power, food, all that stuff. So the idea of maybe like a tax credit for families who have individuals who are being served by DMH living with them, or something like that, some mechanism to kind of recognize that expense. Then also definition of homelessness definitely becomes a big problem with vouchers. So if you're like couch surfing or living temporarily with a friend for 1 month and then another friend the next month, you're, by some people's definition, not homeless, though you don't have a home. So that was definitely a concern. And let's see, that's what we have for that. And then with landlords, just saying that definitely subsidies need to be worth more, need to be more than what they are getting currently paid. And if they can get something, if they can get a person for to pay more than the subsidy, they're going to take that other person. So that subsidy actually needs to be more than like the market value. Otherwise, you're not going to win out in this market. And then just education of landlords about these issues also is thought to be helpful. Switching to my other side here, with boards, definitely an inconsistent message was a concern. Not sure what is the policy, what is the rule, what is the regulation, what is the mission, what is the goal. So having like board mission statements that would be like a touchstone that people could refer back to were thought to be very helpful. And definitely membership, definitely younger members would be something that would be very pleasant, as was mentioned earlier. But also partnering with key stakeholder agencies and requiring that they send a consistent employer as part of their job. So definitely we have a police officer here, that's part of his job. That's a good way of doing that. But maybe if there is some reciprocity, you know, that maybe we'll send DMH people to your board if you'll send people to ours. As long as there's not a conflict of interest based on our training. And then training board needs, definitely advocacy is important. Also equally important with advocacy is how to access policy makers. That's a very key thing. Let's see. Updating on laws and regulations about DMH. You know, we have rules, regulation changes. If the board members can be informed about that, that's good. Also specific board training to that board. Definitely, DMH, even in the southeast area, is not consistent from site to site. So education about what are you actually doing at your site as opposed to another site, that kind of learning would be helpful so they actually get a better understanding of what's going on. And finally, a nice comment that I thought was good is that board members need to be volunteering, doing something more than just attending meetings. And if they do that, that they're actively participating in helping, then you'll have stronger boards is the thought. So those are some of the highlights that were talked about there. Thank you.
Have you noticed that the older you get, the floor gets lower and lower? Holy cow. So we have one more reporter from the third group?
I feel like everyone already stole my thunder, so
I knew they were going to do that.
I don't know if there's anything that, I think everybody's on the same page. The money we spoke about, maybe the one thing that we spoke about that wasn't already mentioned is how do we fight the stigma with landlords, potential landlords, and discrimination. And that someone did bring up that landlords will ask about the income, what the income is, and from that information, the landlord can ascertain that the person has a disability. So how do we counteract that? Other things everybody already mentioned, how do we overcome individuals with quarry issues, poor tenant history issues, how do we find housing that landlords that will take the rent that HUD deems is the current amount, that will pass licensing standards. And the other thing was what was already said is how do we educate landlords with brochures and information about how do we sell that working with DMH and our consumers is in the landlord's best interest and, you know, just being a part of a good neighbor in the community. As far as the board question, again, it was a lot of what was already said, that we need specialized training beyond just the general packet that all the new members get. People are interested in in-person and in online training. And again, what everybody already said is, where does the line between what DMH site director may be able to do versus what NAMI can do versus what a site board can do as far as like press releases, advocacy to the State House, and things like that. And again, we all spoke about recruitment and how do we really reach a diverse pool, both age, demographics, consumers, family members, and other partners in the community who represent, like you guys already mentioned, other agencies that we deal with on a daily basis that meet our consumers' needs.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you. So we've all been sitting here listening. I'm just wondering, are there other maybe thoughts people would like to share with the group? Yes? You
Yeah,
want to come up
the
or?
consumer, right, the consumer voice hasn't really been, I don't think, properly taken into account. One of the things that consumers have, right, is a stable income. And so why isn't there any mention about consumers owning any properties? Any mention of kind of consumer cooperatives? Consumer-owned homes that consumers bring other consumers in. You know, maybe we should develop, maybe we could think about somehow you know, having a department, maybe having a state, maybe politically advocating for people who are disadvantaged to become advantaged. You know, I mean, we're supposed to be moving into the consumer empowering movement kind of area. Well, this, you know, this is empowering when you get to own your own property. When I look at my own past, I mean, I'm living in a rented room that's just going up every year, right? I mean, you know, and my income isn't going up every year. I mean, over these last 20 years, you know, I could have owned my house, right? I mean, I could have been helping other people, you know. None of that is actually kind of mentioned I don't know, something pie in the sky kind of idea.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know how, I don't know, how well that was recorded, but basically what Al was talking about is, we're talking about what can we as professionals or organizations do to increase housing for people with, mental health issues. And what he's bringing to the table is, what about the consumers themselves? Where is their voice in all of this? And, as you were talking, what I was thinking of, could there be a way of, further developing the whole concept of Habitat for Humanity for people with mental health disabilities, that only they would be eligible for houses to be built for them? That would be one way of directly servicing them. But you bring up an important idea, is we need to have discussions like that. Because it's not all that the people that have mental health issues need us to take care of them, to program them, to make things happen for them. We need to empower them to be able to do it for themselves. We need to advocate for them to be at the table. So I thank you for that. That's great. Other comments?
I think there was a program at the Taunton Housing Authority at one point where you could rent to own. You'd eventually own your own house or your own apartment or your own condominium. I don't know whatever happened to that program. It used to be a program.
It's actually coming back on the federal level with the voucher program. Some of the requirements, unfortunately, it's the first time home buyer. If you're currently
Do you want to come up here and present, or? Not
it's
really?
very brief, no. I might fall too right now. So, there is, I wonder if, the success of that, or that would be something to work on, right? Because I think, Al, what Al was saying is, why couldn't, voucher recipients with mental illness or whatever, pool together and buy a condo or, with 40 units, for example, That's innovative, but it's probably, but that is coming back. It actually happened in the past where people who were on Section 8 could actually purchase, I don't know if people know Nikki Glasser, but that's what she did. You might know that name, but that's what she did. She bought her place down near Symphony Hall.
Well, there's clearly a need for, we have resources available, but oftentimes what happens is because of zoning laws or HUD laws or, these different rulings, they end up creating barriers. Good people and organizations and bills and laws that are meant to help people, but then become a barrier when certain people come forward and somehow don't measure up to one of the criteria. So there's clearly a need to, maybe that's going to be part of our advocacy with legislators on how to break down some of these barriers. I was talking to Mark a little bit about, I'm working with Martha's Vineyard, Harbor Homes, which is a new incorporated entity that's trying to buy a house. But there are even rules with DMH that might make this kind of difficult, but Mark's willing to talk with us, and hopefully there's some flexibility there. But we have resources, but sometimes it's a matter of it's laws, it's rulings that they don't even understand how they're in the way, but they are. And then you end up having somebody at a desk saying, unfortunately, I can't help you because of these rules. So we need to speak to the people that are making the rules to see if some of them can be modified. Other questions, comments? Yes.
I was also going to say, in regard to like the homeless, mentally ill, and things like that, I know that they do have in Taunton and some other cities too. They have a orientation for the policemen. I guess they call it training. And I don't know. I think there is one police officer that works in Taunton with the homeless, mentally ill. So I think more collaboration with not just the police, but with all the city departments and state departments, more collaboration.
I think that's important. I don't know if you'd like to come up, officer, to You prefer not to. It's a tough crowd. But, you know, there are police departments, I know on the Cape, the police department, they are trained, they do have an outreach team, and I'm making an assumption, I would hope that a lot of police departments do have somebody that's out there advocating, working with the homeless.
I do.
I know you do, but there's a need for more of that. So that's another area where us as citizen advisory boards is meeting with police officers, because one way or the other, whether it's the town council, town managers, select persons are saying, you've got to do something about those people, it ends up becoming a police problem. And if we can get other departments, like I know Brownsville Police Department has an entity that goes out and works with the homeless in a caring, compassionate way, maybe we can increase that. NAMI does trainings in that for police officers. And I think they do a pretty widespread across the state, but that's something we can look into as well.
I don't want to take all the time, but back in the 80s, when I was homeless for 1 week, the police were very instrumental and very kind about getting me into the hospital where I could get into the community program. So they could be a good resource.
We need to place their good people, but they get saddled with a problem that really comes from town officials, and state officials for not, you know, providing their housing.
They need cooperation and collaboration.
Exactly. Other comments? Or I don't know if Mark, you want to add anything from what you've heard?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, you talk about Habitat for Humanity.
You
And
wanna
I
come on
don't
up?
think some of the comments that were made were around, you know, DDS. And we share a number of the programs that we talked about earlier with DDS. We share the mass housing 3% set aside program with DDS. And we're always trying to reconcile, you know, is it a DDS unit in this new development? Is it a DMH unit? And one unit becomes vacant, and now we're, you know, I want to say that we're competing for that next vacant unit, but we're trying to make sure our individuals are lined up and ready to go to take advantage of that next available unit. So there's a lot of trying to manage what we already have. And then with DDS, we share the FCF loan program. So we're out there trying to talk to community development corporations. We don't do it enough. We don't have the staffing to really be out there, and we talked about it as being proactive. You know, it may not be that we don't do it at all, but we certainly aren't doing it proactively. And then later on, we hear about the Watson in Quincy that was developed, and you know, we later on hear that it was a mass housing financed property, but it didn't get the subsidies that it needed. So then it's affordable, and it's affordable at an income level that we still can't get into without a subsidy. So it gets complicated real fast. So I just wanted to say that when I heard you say even you know, Habitat for Humanity, I think of DDS, and you know, I think of Best Buddies and the things that we don't have, you know, the inequity between DMH and DDS. And with FCF, all we keep seeing is a new development here and a new development here, and the Corporation for Independent Living, who is a contractor of DDS, is banging out units left and right. Now, I don't know if it's related to the Olmstead plan and keeping people out of institutions or moving them into communities, but I gotta get my head wrapped around a little bit more. I talked to Donna a little bit too, and you have a champion at DDS who's now moved from DDS to DHCD, Lynn Tordo. She's responsible for all the homeless, housing and homeless services, or maybe directed more towards homeless, but in the state. But she was over at DDS, and maybe she made more of those partnerships that I talked about earlier that made things happen, or maybe it was the laws that allowed for DDS to get more of this loan program. Or maybe there was staff at a central office level that was working with community Center for Independent Living, CIL, and they're making these units happen. We are like, for every 10 that they do, we might do 1. So it's that kind of thinking that we need to improve upon. And I know that with the strategic plan that I talked to some of the groups about, that this commissioner is putting together, Commissioner McCool has already put that out there, but we're gonna be working on that, but I think those are the kind of things, we need someone at a central office level, a person, to really make those connections, put together the plans, and then start to be able to work with the sites and the developers that are out there. So that was just a thought, when you said Habitat for Humanity.
I would say, just to reinforce what Mark's saying, you know, one of the things that certainly citizens can do is you see, you know, if you follow your community cable TV network, you'll probably have an opportunity to watch the planning board sessions or the zoning board of appeals sessions, and you'll see people coming up there talking about development and things they want to do, and they say who they are, and you figure out how to reach them. You'll read about it in your local paper. And so I think, you know, you don't need to be an expert in housing finance. The piece that we're kind of talking about that really dovetails, we have people like Mark who can provide that expertise, but we don't have enough folks out there connecting to landlords, housing authorities, developers, and saying, what are you doing? You know, and all the statistics or all the kind of the stuff around affordable housing, I think there's probably only one thing you really need to know. It's an easy, I think it's fair to say it's an easy number to remember, because affordable housing means a lot of different things to a lot of different housing programs, and it means a lot of different things to people developing housing. So you don't get caught up on that word so much, but I would say pretty much the majority of the people that we provide services to, who are on fixed incomes, SSI, SSDI, really fall somewhere, most of them fall underneath what's the 30% of median family income. All right? So really the only question you need to know to ask a developer is, so how many people below 30% of the median family income does this project serve? And most of them are going to say, whoa, I'm doing that. I'm only required to do 80% of median, or 110% in this program, or 50%. But your question is, how many? And then that opens up the discussion of how to get there. And that's where the expertise is. But the key thing is under 30%. That's where most of the people we serve on the kinds of resources they have fit. And there's not a lot of affordable housing being built to serve those folks. Hence the Section 8 doesn't work for me, or that rent they want to charge doesn't work. How can that be affordable? Well, there's a lot of understanding what affordability is. We want affordable housing under 30% median income. You've got to serve some of those kind of poor people.
One of the things that I picked up is that we can only do so much, and I think what I'm picking up from you, Mark, is that, you know, that you need help.
Yeah.
And so maybe part of our advocacy with legislators might be to ask the state for more money, because DMH needs more workers to work with Mark, under Mark, over Mark, whatever Mark is necessary, so that Mark becomes more of a team. And then as more of a team, a greater ability for you to then to work with us. And I look forward to having you back at the area board meeting. And maybe we need to think about forming a housing committee. So maybe from every site board, maybe we'd meet with Mark the time 2, 3, 4 times a year to sort of become like, you know, students of the housing to then educate, you know, our boards. Any other questions, comments? We're getting towards the end, but we do have some more time.
I have a comment.
Sure, thank you, Vincent.
Or a question, really. Combination. Would you say that the stigma attached to mental health in the public's view is better than it used to be, or worse, or just about the same?
I think it's better, but it's not enough.
Yeah,
It's a work in progress. It's slow, but we're not there. You know, we're so judgmental, all of us. You know, we become judgmental, and we need to work, you know, on that. And it definitely continues to be a challenge. There's progress made in all the isms, but you know, it's not enough. We need to keep working at it. Thank you. Other comments, sort of into the final comments area? I look forward to working further with you, Mark, on the housing. I think that, I hope what we've established here today is that over this next year, we've got two main focuses. I mean, every site has got their own agenda of items that they're working on, but hopefully in a collaboration of all of the site boards and the area board is housing. How can we become more knowledgeable and skillful and effective in helping to increase housing for, you know, our consumers and our professional development? And we definitely need to bring in new board members. And again, maybe make the challenge in each board that everybody should be bringing at least one person on. And when you bring that person on, you mentor them, because they're going to need that support. Because sometimes board members, they kind of come and go because they're a little bit confused or intimidated by the process. I want to thank you, buddy. It's a joy working with you and your leadership, and it helps us to be on course. The area board directors, thank you guys, you know, so much. And we're on a learning curve. We're all trying to, you know, do better, and we're trying to represent, you know, all of you in the site boards the best we can. We need your feedback. You know, send us recommendations. You know, when your representative is coming, you might have some questions or recommendations you want brought to the, you know, to the area board. Usually what happens is the site boards report what the area boards are doing, but you do have a right and a need, an opportunity to ask questions from the area board to respond to, or needs that you would like the area board to help you to have met. So that's really, really important as well. Kim, you're the glue to so much of everything, and I just really appreciate you know, working with you. What we're doing is really, really important. Yes, you.
Alan, I'm sorry.
Can you come up?
No.
Yell, Jean,
You
yell.
can, but you won't.
I'll just stand up for a minute.
Yeah.
No, I just had Dawn, is it Dawn? I'm sorry. She had with us in a group that she was going to get information back on what we discussed to the
Would you like to
sites.
report?
Is that okay, Dawn?
Yeah, done.
I'll say that, yeah, so that everybody will get some information back from the state level on the housing situation. And
What I was mentioning was the work.
Why don't you want to come up? Or?
No, what I was mentioning is the work going on. Right. So, in my other life, working with the Department on the State Mental Health Planning Council, we have a very active housing subcommittee. And that, I was mentioning that committee, like with department support, we had a big housing conference last year where we brought together people from the development industry, people from the provider community, leaders in the department, leaders at DHCD and CDAC and POA and some of the other kind of public interest housers and funders. And we're going to have a follow-up one in January or February of this year. And to try to push an agenda of how do we, and Mark kind of pointed it out earlier, that there are these resources there. The governor's housing bill has a lot of capital development funds, the FCF funds. In addition to the DMH housing subsidies, DHCD administers a whole other affordable housing subsidy program that there's no bar against our clients using that money too, but we don't. But some other agencies are getting a leg up on us in getting more of a larger share of those resources for their clients. So part of what we're talking about in the housing subcommittee is how do we get a larger share, just what you brought up today, Mark. And so what I said is as things come out of the housing subcommittee, I'm happy to get that information back out to Buddy in the area and Mark so that it could be distributed to people here. So, the other thing is in conjunction with the housing conference, MMH is going to issue, people are waiting, I guess it's going to be 2020 by then. People are waiting 2020. So an update of our earlier report.
And Donna, while you're on camera,
I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
I would never come up.
Yes. Could you just say a word about, so there's gonna be more opportunity to provide input into the initiative that you all have now, gathering input for the commissioner on mental health priorities and things.
Absolutely.
And just say a word about what folks over the next year might hear about.
So, the Southeast area, for lack of a better term, is our beta site. You're the first area that we've come out to participate in a meeting like this. So we're going to be working our way around the state. And also we're convening all the time our partners like NAMI and Health Law Advocates and PAL, the Parent and Professional Advocacy League, and the Children's Mental Health Campaign. So we're all collaborating on what we need to do together and trying to set the agenda, you know, going forward. Part of it is how already getting prepared for advocating for the state budget, even though the governor's budget isn't written yet and the legislative budget isn't written yet. Just an example is we went the other day to meet with Representative Garbali. So Rep. Garbali is from Arlington. He's the person that filed the amendment last year to the DHCD, DMH housing rental subsidy bill to add $1 million over and above what we were able, and the commissioner was really like the point person, getting the governor to put $1 million in his budget. The year before, we got an amendment for $2 million because there wasn't any increase in the governor's budget. Last year, the governor put in $1 million, and then we got another $1 million from the legislature. We've already been to see Rep. Garbali, and said, are you in? We don't know yet what the governor's going to do, but regardless of what the governor does, we're going to need that other $1 million. And he was like, yes, I'm there. He's already directed us to go see Representative Leibowitz, who heads Ways and Means, and we've already written to him, but we're going to work our way through the legislature. Now, the department can't go do that. We as an advocacy organization can go and do that kind of lobbying, but I just want to point out that it's the deep respect that those legislators have for people in the department. They know you, they know the work you do, they respect that work, the commissioner, and it makes our job as advocates easy because we're arguing for them to do something